On the back of the Chapter 3 review for assessment, there are a few proofs. Let's go through those at this time. So first of all, I see given, so I'm going to write down whatever's given up above. A is parallel to B, semicolon, measure of angle 5 equals 100, except that's down below, so measure of angle 5 equals 100 is also given. So I will erase, if I have a good eraser. Okay, so in my diagram I know A and B are parallel to each other, and I know measure of angle 5 equals 100 degrees, so I'm going to label those. Now it says angle 5 is congruent to angle 1. Well, those two are corresponding angles. Since the lines are parallel, my reason is parallel lines mean that corresponding angles are congruent. So measure of angle 5 equals measure of angle 1 looks like angle 5 is congruent to angle 1, so that is the definition of congruent angles. When it just switches from measure to measures being equal to angles being congruent, it's definition. And so measure of angle 1 equals 100 degrees. Well, I already know measure of angle 5 equals 100 degrees, and measure of angle 5 equals measure of angle 1. Therefore, measure of angle 1 equals 100 degrees. So that is transitive property, or you can use substitution. Okay, next proof. We're given that measure of angle 6 equals measure of angle 4. That's the first line. Definition of congruent angles says if I have measures that are equal, then the angles are congruent. Now it says A is parallel to B. Well, I know A is parallel to B because angle 6 and angle 4 are congruent. And so here I knew that the alternate interior angles are congruent, therefore the lines are parallel. And if the lines are parallel, that means angles 8 and 2 are congruent to each other. Those are alternate exterior angles. So I'm trying to prove, so that's my last step, angle 8 is congruent to angle 2. And this is, I already know in step 3 that the lines are parallel. And so because the lines are parallel, the alternate exterior angles are congruent. So notice in step 3 I was saying that the lines are parallel because angles were congruent, so my arrow was leading to parallel lines. And in the last step I knew the lines were parallel, so now I can go to alternate exterior angles, so I start with the lines being parallel. Right, then at the bottom, A is parallel to B and C is parallel to D. I want to prove that angle 1 is congruent to angle 11. So my two given statements are the fact that these lines are parallel. A is parallel to B, C is parallel to D. If I want to show that 1 and 11 are congruent, I need to go work my way around the diamond. So there's lots of ways we could do this. I'm going to say angle 1 and angle 13 are congruent. And that's because when I have parallel lines, the corresponding angles are congruent. So that was step 3. Now 13 and 11, remember I'm trying to use 1 and 11, so I used 1 and 13, so now 13 and 11 are alternate exterior angles. So angle 13 is congruent to angle 11, and that's because with parallel lines we have alternate exterior angles are congruent. And that leaves my last step as saying that angle 1 is congruent to angle 11, and that's using transitive property or substitution. So the last proof, let's see if I can get the camera straight. Okay, again I'm told that A is parallel to B and C is parallel to D. Those are both given. I want to show that 16 and 8. And so to get there, I need to show that 16 and 12, again there's lots of ways we can do this, but I'm going to say angle 16 is congruent to angle 12 because when I have parallel lines, the corresponding angles are congruent. So now I have 12, so I want to connect 12 to 8. Angle 12 is congruent to angle 8 because parallel lines mean that corresponding angles are congruent. And finally I'm trying to prove that 16 and 8 are congruent. Adjust the camera a little bit more. Uh-oh. Yeah, that'll work. And so I'm trying to prove that angle 16 is congruent to angle 8. And again, that is transitive property or substitution. And we're done.